Hi guys. I can say guys because there's only guys here now. So I'll talk a bit about the documentation. So strap in. It's going to be a wild ride. Everyone loves documentation. Today I'll just go over what documentation is and how I work on it, how we work on it on the company where I work, and why I think it's good to have a proper documentation for any type of your projects. You might be developing plugins, themes, and even websites sometimes need some documentation. So just a bit about me. This is the company I work for, On The Go Systems. You probably best know us by the WPML plugin, the multilingual plugin. We also have a Toolset, which is a set of plugins that allow you to build, whole dynamic websites. Like you create custom types and custom fields and stuff like this, and then you put it together using Gutenberg, the block editor. So just out of curiosity, do you use Gutenberg, the block editor? Anyone? But do you know what it is, right? Okay, so it's the new editor in WordPress, basically, just to get it out of the way. And just a note that we are actually hiring, so we are looking for senior PHP developers and React, Apollo, JavaScript kind of developers, and actually a technical writer. So if you're into any of this, you can catch me later, or you can write to me. We can arrange something. So okay, let's start. So about documentation, I would say that it basically started with Gutenberg, and this is an intentional pun on my side because of the new WordPress editor. So the way I see it is the guy Gutenberg. I think his name was Johannes. I think it's just my story in my head. The church came to him and said we need 10 new Bibles in 1 year, and he was it was handwritten, and he was okay, how will I do this? And being the genius that he was, ultimately, he was lazy, I presume, because I'm also very lazy, and they say every genius is lazy. I'm not genius, I'm just lazy. But he thought about it and he came up with this. And I think you can see it's medieval because it looks like those, torture devices. So I think the GUI came kind of from there. But so he created this, and he printed probably 100 books in 1 month instead of 1 year. And that's how it started, right? But it evolved very quickly, and very soon, they started printing Bibles, then they started printing stories and stuff like this. But it actually culminated in the most important writing, type of books, which is documentation. Of course, right? Because the topic of the talk. So this is how it evolved. Of course, this is 20th century. So with the industrialization, things become more complex. So you needed to explain them. Even the cutting saw. What can you do with it? I don't know. But there's a manual. So it must be interesting. So and then of course it all exploded, and now we are up to this. And I put this it's kind of a generic image, but I put it on purposely because this and this is today's focus. So it kind of reflects on documentation as well, because the way we process and consume content, it just changes all the time. I was just talking to my colleague about TikTok. I don't use it, but you probably heard of it. So I was joking that soon I will be creating TikTok documentation videos of 15 seconds or something. So who knows? We'll see. So just quickly, how it looks like to do documentation. So I didn't mention in the intro that what I do is I manage documentation. So I manage documentation for WPML and Toolset, and if something else comes along. So there are two very big projects, right? So and very different. So one is a multilingual plugin, and the other allows you to build any site you want. So it's fairly complex, And you work with two teams and stuff like this. So I like those memes, what my friends think I do. So this is basically my experience. They don't know what I do. I just I do something that's they don't understand. It's like geek talk, but not even for geeks like, you know, programmers, because it's even boring to programmers, so it's like just beyond beyond anything. And this is what society thinks I do. I'm a little clippy, you know, so I'm annoying, like I pop up when I shouldn't pop up, and, you know, I don't solve anything. And, you know, this is what probably our developers think I do. Here's one, so he could vouch for it. And this is what I think I do, like vast, you know, content, like vast information, and I put it all together. But what it boils down to is this, and it's like writing or editing or recording, whatever you call it, is like this 1 little %, and everything else is like what you actually do when you do documentation. So you need to test the stuff, you know, you need to talk to developers, you need to go to like a million of meetings, you need to also be involved with marketing team, because, you know, it's connected and you cannot say one thing in documentation and other in marketing, and stuff like this. So it's like, and then of course you need to like research stuff, you know, you cannot just write something. It needs to be correct, it needs to be like properly written, and then you need to analyze what you did, right? You use Google Analytics or like tools like that to see like if anyone is actually reading what you wrote. So because this is like in a workshop space and this is a WordCamp, I always like think that it's like when I go to WordCamps, I like to like get like ideas for like new stuff, new apps, new tools. So I will just quickly go through the tools I use, because maybe it will be interesting. So this is like the types of tools I suggest. I think the slides will be available, so I won't, you know, stick to this. So first, of course, spell checker and, you know, text analyzers. This is like evolving like super quickly. So first you had spell checker in like Word and stuff, and now you have like Grammarly, which I use. I have a premium account, but you all have a free one. So it kind of connects with everything. You can use it in Google Docs, you can use it in Word, you know, and it's free. The spell checker and some basic stuff is free. But now now it uses some kind of like artificial intelligence to, I mean, algorithms to, you know, like tell you stuff. Like, is it readable? Is it like, it's not just about spell checking, but it's also like, exactly. And let's say you can use it in, you know, Gmail. So it actually tells you like how you sound. Like this is the new feature. Like, is it like friendly? Is it very like, you know, business-like? Or is it like a sad smiley is if you're like, you know, if you're not, the email is not sounding positive. And it astounds me. It really gets the tone. This is another like similar but a bit different. It's more for like readability, and also it has like built-in spell checker. You can check it online. It's free. You can use it in the browser, or you can like it's more independent, like indie, you know, indie developer. Much smaller than Grammarly, but very nice. So you can check it out for free, and there's an app. You can like I don't know if it's donate or like some small fee. So it's also a good tool. And finally, Readable is like an online service. Like you log in and you can check your stuff for readability, which is important because it's not just about being correct grammatically or, you know, like the spelling and everything, but how it reads. If the language is, you know, like this one, it's way too long, right? Or like long words and stuff like this. Next thing is like note-taking app. There are like a gazillions of apps. So use whatever. Really, these are the two ones I use or used. This is what I use now. It has a free version and premium with some extra stuff. It's very nice. You can like connect stuff, you know, and this is important, not only in documentation, so that you don't get lost, you know, because self-organization is like the key thing. If you want to like produce some materials for your users, you need to be organized yourself. So with Notion, you can actually, you know, take just simple notes, or you can connect them in like different, basically database structures. So it's a very, very good tool. And Evernote, I used to use it. I don't use it anymore because I switched to Notion, but it's also a nice tool. It's a bit different. It doesn't have some things, but it has some other things. And it's like a, how do you say it? It's like a classic note-taking app, so it's huge, and it's a thing to consider. Okay, these ones you probably all know, Google Docs and MS Office. Collaboration is very important because let's say I write something like in API, I probably want Jan to check it because, you know, I'm not, I know like PHP and I know JavaScript, but I'm not a programmer like in the strict sense, so it's good to have someone review it. Or if you're writing something like that's meant for like wider audience, it's good for like someone maybe from marketing to check it, you know, or, you know. So collaboration is important. And the already mentioned Notion is like also supports this. But I think it's in a premium, right?
No, actually, the free version is only limited in how much content you can store. Otherwise, it's
okay.
the same.
So even in Notion you can collaborate, you know, leave comments and then work on the documents together. And finally, like because today, videos, you know, are like exploding, and everyone wants to watch a video, and I get like a gazillion of pings from like clients, and everyone like, I publish a new tutorial like that it took me like a few days to really to produce, and then the first comment is, could you do a tutorial for this, So this is like the classic story, and so you need like tools for this, and really Snagit from TechSmith. It's for screenshots. It's really like the best screenshot taking app. I use it all the time, even for like private stuff when you need to send something, and you need to point someone, you can write on it and stuff. It even has like, you can turn it on and it takes like the static image into like, I don't know how, but it like breaks it down into elements. So for example, you could remove like text from a static image and stuff like this. So it's very, very nice. And Camtasia is from the same company for videos. So it's like it's very simplistic in a way, but it has a lot of options. And if you need like simple stuff, you can get it done very quickly. It's much easier to grasp than Adobe Premiere, for example, or like Blackmagic, what's the name, DaVinci or something like this, because they are really more for videos and movies and stuff. But with Camtasia, you can really, like for YouTube or tutorials or for even promo videos, I do promo videos, you can easily do something good very quickly. So this is Snagit, very simple, and this is Camtasia. It looks a bit crowded now because this is like a whole video on the timeline, but basically you just have blocks of things and audio and video, and you can cut it all and move around. So it's just like classic editing. Okay, so how do you deliver it? How do you publish it? It's kind of a question that is like it depends on what you do and what what you want to achieve. But basically, text with images are like easier, I would say, to publish and update, and they're easier more searchable by Google and stuff. But on the other hand, like as I said, like people want videos and they're impatient, and if you produce something, be prepared that they will just like look at the images and read the headings, and then if they like it in like 5 seconds, they will maybe spend like a few minutes on it. Videos, on the other hand, so how do you publish it? Do you put it on YouTube? Do you put it on Vimeo? Or do you put it even on your site? It's a question. So everything has its advantages, but we use YouTube for quite some time because it's basically like, Google for videos. I mean, it's owned by Google, but, basically it's it even is starting to like, analyze the content itself, So from what I read, it's not just the description you put. It now is aware of the actual content. But of course, the problem is with the updating. So how do you update the video? Do you remove the old one? Do you put the new one? So there are questions. In our experience and in my experience, like since we're now on the WordPress conference, really WordPress is the natural choice. So let's say you're creating documentation for a WordPress project. You probably have a site built with WordPress. So this is what we do. We have like a structure of pages, regular WordPress pages. And for some specific content like API, which we want to look specific, like have a template for it, we use a custom post type and with some custom fields. So it's, WordPress is very good for this. I know there are like, I looked into it because like this is what I do all days, like documentation. I looked into stuff like, you know, you have wikis, you have like these like popular frameworks with like, which are database-less, you know, like without database, just like text files. But ultimately, you know, you can do it with WordPress just the same and even easier, and like it even scales very nice. So, you know, and our project like Toolset, it has like a lot of pages of documentation, and it's like, it just works. It's fine. So about writing, you know, just a quick tip. I would suggest like writing with goals. Like probably you, when you program a plugin or a theme or build a site, you have a goal. You know, you don't build a site. I mean, I build sites for clients, so I know that they don't always have goals. For example, I remember doing like a web shop, you know, and it was like I asked, "What is your goal?" And they didn't know. And I was talking to marketing, you know, division, and my boss, who was like selling us doing this, he didn't care as long as we do the site, you know, for the money. So this is wrong, you know, and this is like a lot of this I learned here with on-the-go systems is like, you should have a goal. Like, why are you writing? Are you writing just because someone wrote, you know, you're creating videos because someone said like, I would like to see a tutorial about this? Or do you want to like please this person, or is it meant for like wider audience? Who is this audience, you know? And because it allows you to easier than see if you did it right or wrong, or if you can correct, you know. So you can see this later with data. And I will mention this in the next slide, but before that, like this is one of the challenges. So like, you know, when you publish something, the easiest part is writing or like creating a video. That's the easy part, because then how do you know like when something changes? You need to change screenshots, you need to change API. So if it's like complex, like in my case, I need to have a very good, you know, workflow set with our developers. But even if it's like a small team, maybe it's only you or you're like maybe a partner or like more partners, you know, it's still like collaboration is the key, and like self-organization, because otherwise you will get lost, you know. And I think this like also overflows into development itself, because the developers should also like comment the code and, you know, have some kind of version control, so you know that we all know what's happening. Otherwise, you really get lost. And again, like videos are super like complex to, I mean, much more complex to update and stuff like this if GUI changes. So you need to keep up with it. And this is part of what I just said. Like, so besides updating, how do you know when something changes? So version control is one of these like tools that I think is getting, you know, more and more like not followers, but it's really, it's the tool of today. And this is what I mentioned, like you need to measure. So let's say you created a tutorial about, I don't know, how to create a directory site, you know, like with the ads, and people can buy ads, and you have this site. And you have this tutorial about it, right? You wrote it, it's very nice, it's great, and you have like 10,000 visits per month, which is like a lot. But then you go to analytics and you see that like 10,000 people came and they stayed for 30 seconds, right? So did you meet your goals? I would say probably not, you know, because if it's like a whole tutorial and people are there for 30 seconds, something is wrong, right? So this is how you use measuring to like, you really know like where are you going or where you're at. On the other hand, you could have like 100 people there, you know, but from these 100 people, you can see maybe like a few sales, and maybe that they are there for 5 to 10 minutes, you know, because it's a long tutorial. Then that's much better than these 10,000 or 100,000 people. And of course, user feedback. This is tricky because, you know, like, but even the worst feedback you get from like the most annoying person, it should, like, you should take it into consideration, because usually it's there for a reason. Maybe it's not, maybe your documentation or your products I mean, your documentation or videos are not the cause for frustration, but something else is. So maybe it's not something for you to fix, but in the product itself. So this is like, I would say, very, very important. And when we're talking about documentation, it's always good to have some kind of a feedback form or something where people can comment, can leave, can actually give you feedback directly, not to, write on info@yourcompany.com. So this brings us to, why actually do it, now that I badgered you with all these details. So why would you do it? I think this is important because, and this, so I don't know if you watch South Park, but for me personally, it's like Chewbacca defense. I don't think I need to defend, why you would do documentation. And in case you didn't watch South Park or heard of this, basically this is a lawyer and this is a trial. And he, instead of saying something relevant, he's just talking about Chewbacca. And then he says, why am I talking about this? Because I'm so certain in my client's innocence that I'm talking about gibberish. So this is this is what I think about documentation. But I know it's not sustainable for a WordCamp talk. So I will just give you a few reasons. And I would start with branding and marketing. So this is how I work. I don't know if you have the same, but I don't buy something worth of $100 or $200 without seeing how it works or preferably trying it. So videos and documentation is a very, very good way of doing this, So because you usually see GUI and what I hate, I don't know if it's the right word, but what I really don't like, I don't know if you saw it, you have a product, it's supposed to do something very specific, and then you go to the front page, and there's a video that doesn't show you anything. It's just like marketing, it will do this and do this, but you don't see how it works. So I I'm not sure how these are successful, but I think in our experience and analytics, we saw that they aren't. So you can have a promo video, but it should show you important, relevant stuff. So let's say in our example, we have plugins for creating websites, right? So I can show you super fancy websites you can build with it, front end, but they're websites, it's just you can, I can show you a fancy website built without it. But the important part is the back end, right? Because we're in WordPress. So this is the kind of stuff you want to show. And this is also where documentation can come into play, because if you come to the documentation and see okay, this is not so hard, even if it's ACF, okay, I'm a developer, so this is how I do. It's fairly simple to use the API or something. So this is why documentation can really be good for the brand itself. And of course SEO, because oftentimes your product, the documentation writes about important stuff related to the product. So in our case, it's building websites, building directory sites, or if it's WPML, I mean multilingual sites. So when I write something about how to translate something with WPML, it's important to write it in a way that Google will actually understand it and be able to show it to relevant searches. So don't cheat. That's my biggest tip. Don't cheat, because you could use different techniques for getting Google to but it fires back. It doesn't work in the long term. So but yes, relevant traffic basically does lead to sales, which we see it all the time in in our projects. And finally, support. Of course, if you have good documentation, you will have less support. I was just in a meetup in Ljubljana, in Slovenia. I live in Slovenia. So there was a guy who is the author of the WordPress ad inserter plugin. I don't know if you heard it, so it allows you, to place ads, different ads like Google ads and stuff like this, wherever you want on the site. So it's it's not the simplest plugin, I would say. So he's reaching 300,000 installs. So this is a lot. So I talked to him later and I asked so how do you have a team or what? No, it's just me. But you have more than 200,000 installs. So how do you do it? The support, how many support questions do you have? Because the guy actually has another job, a day job. This is not his job. So he says no, what I do is when I have a question or I have a problem, I just put it either in a frequently asked questions section or to other documentation. So just if it's not in the documentation, I just add it. If it's there, I just tell them it's here. So it can be as simple as that. And he says like besides telling people where to look for, he has like maybe 1 or 2 tickets per day. So it's manageable for like one person. So this is like, and we see it also like a lot because our supporters like we have a tight connection, and we see it all the time. Even for our supporters to support the clients, they need documentation because you cannot. It's so complex after some time that you cannot remember everything. So you cannot remember API for stuff. For some like I don't know feature. All the time. So you need our documentation. We don't have. There's probably some internal documentation, but basically we don't have specific. We use documentation which clients use. We use it ourselves, and that's it basically. So I think there's basically a lot of reason for you to have to document your projects. As I said, I built sites for clients so even in this case, some basic documentation for people that didn't use maybe WordPress, or maybe you use it really as a CMS in a really big way. So maybe you just do it a lot of customizations. Documentation is can really save you time. It can help you, with so many things that it's just worth investing into, and we are also we keep investing more into it because it returns more. So it depends. I know that smaller teams will have different stories. Everyone has its own story and its own way of doing things. But if you do it properly, I'm sure that it will help you on many different levels. And that's it. That's my presentation. So if you have any questions, I would be happy to answer.
Just a quick question.
Yes.
In the Go systems, you have the all documentation in WordPress.
Yes.
Means the documentation for customers and also the internal documentation for developers.
Actually, so developers have their own Git repo. I think it's in Git,
Yeah, we
but
have GitLab,
Yeah.
and we use wiki pages in GitLab for some internal stuff, but we also rely on inline documentation a lot. We have very good inline documentation, at least for the newer parts of the code base.
yeah.
But I also sometimes use our online documentation for some things I'm not very familiar with. So yeah.
And as you mentioned, you follow some rules for content creation. Do you have some internal documentation for creating documentation?
Yes, there's also this, but it's more I would say guidelines more than documentation.
Yeah.
And actually, this is the interesting part because we discussed this lately, and we caught ourselves cheating a bit, because we have as I said, set up a goal, audience. This is a process. So and when you have a lot of work, then you tend to skip I'm a manager, I did this for 5 years, I can write I don't need to go through the, so you kind of sometimes you cheat, but we realize that it's not doing us favors, right? So it's definitely we have the guidelines, and the guidelines say that you start with the audience, the goals, and then with an outline. So you don't write a single word before you have before you know each section, basically the outline with each section. So if it's a directory site, which plugins you need, what you need to install, where you start, and then each topic. So yeah, definitely there's documentation about writing documentation.
And do you have some control processes to follow this documentation? Just our problem.
Mm-hmm.
I lead a team of 5 people,
Mm-hmm.
and we found out that what the documentation we are losing in our code, as the fluctuation on the market is on a high level right now.
Mm-hmm.
So if one person leaves, we will find out what he forgot to document.
Yeah.
Inline documentation in code, or
mainly we are trying to have external documentation because we found out that inline documentation is good, like notes, but usually the people had no idea where to find this particular code, so the inline documentation then lost its sense.
some high-level documentation.
Yeah.
Should be
Yeah, we
external.
have README
Yeah.
the root of the document, and inline documentation.
You like put it on the line 125? Is it just a function?
Like this module or plugin works like handles this kind of functionality, and like here are like the gotchas that you need to be careful about, and you can find those in like functions that are like nowadays.
You have this in the production environment or only on your staging environment?
That's basically for developers, so it's committed in Git, and I think some build process strips it out, so you cannot access those files from outside. But
okay, thanks.
But I don't know if this helps, but we also have like for developers like workflow. So basically they cannot. We use U-Track. I don't know if you heard about it. It's like for tickets, you know. So
issue tracker from Jazbec.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you type U-Track, I cannot. U-Track JetBrains. So basically it's like a project management system. And you create a ticket for everything. So if you need to document something, you create a ticket. If you need to add a feature to a plugin, you create a ticket, right?
Actually,
Yes.
If I may, we actually have like U-Track allows you to write custom workflows. So if you have a ticket in a development project, then before it reaches certain status, you are either required to connect a documentation ticket to it, or to add some tag which says no docs. So explicitly have to take action to say this doesn't have to be documented.
Yes.
So then you are responsible for making this decision.
Yeah.
It's important because
Yeah.
otherwise this communication between developers and the documentation team doesn't always work very smoothly. So.
Yeah, and I mean there is so much. Really, there is so much information that you cannot remember everything, you know, without this kind of support systems. But I wanted to say that, so I don't know if I got this right. So if someone leaves, there are tickets, so someone takes over the tickets. So it's fairly easy, yeah. But yeah, that's it.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Okay, thanks guys.